Anyway, there are lots of prejudices against why we should use literature, even with a little l, in the language classroom. So I'm going to go through a few of them. First bit could be the subject of this poem, Brian Patten. So dead thick. I'm going to do what it tells you in the manual never to do and read from the board. You don't mind that, do you? There's only one answer. Yeah. No, I haven't kept up with the modern stuff. Haven't read a book in years. Textbooks a few, but nothing new, mind you. It's not that I don't have the inclination. It's that nothing's grabbed my fancy. Still, I like what I've read. Hardy, Golding. I'll flick through Grey and Green if I have to, but no, nothing new. Mind you, I read the reviews. They contain a lot of sharp observation. After reading a couple, I find I can form my own opinion. I'm too busy for literature, that's the problem. I'm after promotion. Ideally, what I'd like is a job in administration. What do? Teach. English. It's exhausting. The kids are thick, they've nothing between their ears. Do you know what? Some of them haven't read a book in years. And it sort of rather neatly sort of sums up an attitude that I know that a lot of the teachers that I work with in state schools find that, because I did. It tends to be the nature of working in ELTs from a British Council standpoint, locally, is that you tend to meet the teachers who want to break away from the mould, who've got some sort of dynamic urge within them. And very often, what's holding them back are their colleagues, sort of the hidden part of the iceberg as far as we're concerned in working in ELT. And when I've shown that poem to teachers in that state, they all nod their heads in sort of very meaningful ways, you know, and you can tell that they've got half a dozen names that they could attach to that particular poem. But that's one of the obstacles that they have. However, within the context of why we might do it, I don't know if any of you read this book. It's if you want a book that one of these sort of books that almost every page you turn, you go, yes, that's exactly right. Oh, he said that. Oh, God, yeah, exactly. And at the end of it, you are profoundly depressed at the same time. You know? It's one of those kind of books. It's sort of The Empire of Illusion, particularly looking in America, and The End of Literacy is the subtitle. And this idea that literacy, in the way that he's defined here, is that literacy is more than reading. It's reading that is put in a context that is personalised. And it's that ability to read and absorb information, if you like, to turn fact and information into knowledge, and to knowledge that relates to the individual and that has that particular individual context, is the most important thing, and that we're moving away from that. That it's very much, and the education system in particular, is very much geared towards collecting fact and reprocessing facts rather than absorbing it and putting it into the context of the person. Michael Rosen sort of goes to looks at it in another way. He's the children's laureate that I'm sure you know in the UK at the moment. And there's something rather sort of hollow laugh, isn't it, about the worksheets, because that's what we do. We all produce worksheets. It's sort of. I find that quite a hard one, because in fact, I suppose 60% of my job is producing worksheets, and it sort of becomes a bit humbling when you put it in that context. But yeah, but that's of course looking back to what happens at home, and that broader concept of what reading and books of literature actually mean. I'm skimming through this because it's not what we need to concentrate on the moment, so I just wanted to give some of the background to the thinking. This is the Alan Maley and Fitch O'Connell look at the world of teachers and sort of why, when asking teachers generally in schools, why they avoid extensive reading as reading literature or anything relating to that tends to be called. They avoid it as much as possible, even though it's obligatory in many circumstances. So they'll very often do just enough to get by. Insufficient time. So they'll often choose stories or books or texts which will do the minimum amount that's required, so they can just tick that box and then move on to the next thing in the curriculum. They're not going to waste time spending any extra time looking at extensive reading and literature. A very real problem, of course, is the cost. Reading materials are just not available. School libraries, are where they exist, tend not to have collections of books which suits the need for students to get involved in what they're reading. There tends to be, if there's an extensive collection of English literature there, it tends to be the old canonic stuff and sort of some of the old stalwarts, not something that is necessarily going to engage your 14-year-old, for example, voluntarily. And of course the whole thing's down to cost. It's certainly not going to have class sets. Undervalued in the syllabus. Part of it comes down, I mean, I think that part of the lack of value that's given within any syllabus in syllabuses in and out of the state sector is to do with the fact that reading at this level is notoriously difficult to assess. Therefore it's very, very hard to sort of pin it into the assessment process and exams. And if you can't do that, it's part of the sort of, Chicago School of Economics bit that if you can't count it, you can't manage it. And so, we avoid it and we walk away from that side of things. And then there's always the downward pressure, institutional pressure and pressure from peers, particularly within departments, heads of departments, that no, you don't want to waste your time looking away from the textbook. Everything you need is in the textbook, and that's the limit of it. And with the pressure of sort of in a way that curriculum and timetables are designed, that's often very much the reality, even for those teachers who really, really, really want to move away from it, put something else into it. It's very hard to find the time to do it. So those were the things which we found were stopping teachers from getting involved.